I want to introduce to you Jen Flood, the State Budget Director, for a conversation with Samantha.
Director Flood, how are you? Long time no see. I think the last time we talked was after the fiscal year 2025 budget was signed into law.
That's right. Now it's time for the next one.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? The U.S. House Republicans have voted out their Medicaid plan. It's a little bit smaller than what people were projecting initially, but are you still concerned? Are you still sweating a bit?
We're watching with great concern about the discussion in Washington, D.C. As you mentioned, Congress passed a slightly scaled down Medicaid cut plan. We're still tracking that it could mean billions of dollars for the state, and hundreds of thousands of Michiganders would lose access to health care coverage. We're talking about women who are pregnant, children, seniors, people with disabilities, and low-income working Michiganders from the Healthy Michigan program. That's been a huge success for our state. Governor Whitmer worked with then Governor Snyder to get it done in a bipartisan fashion, and so I'm thankful that our U.S. Senators, Slatkins and Peters, will continue to fight to protect the program, and will continue to watch with great interest.
Some people have the question, is there a way that the state can possibly find savings with how it administers Medicaid, rather that be dealing with pharmaceuticals, rather that be, again, taking a look at these work requirements, these work mandates? What are your thoughts? Is there room for savings here, and what do they look like?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion. I know in Washington, D.C., we've heard the expression waste, fraud, and abuse, and that's how we'll come up with the savings in billions that they're looking for. But I can tell you, we run a really tight ship, and the department is really focused on efficiency and working with the Office of Inspector General, as well as the federal government, to root out any waste, fraud, or abuse. And so when it comes to programs that could be offered, optional services, when people say that, they could be talking about taking away access to nursing homes or dental benefits. And so none of the decisions are easy, and the $2 billion price tag that we're tracking, that cannot be accomplished via savings or efficiencies.
Now, I know that there is, and I have been talking about GOP1s a lot, and I don't know about you, I'm always seeing hers ads every time I go on social media. I know Michigan is one of a few states that offers GLP-1 Medicaid coverage for obesity purposes, not just diabetes. Could that be a way to find savings? Look at some of the Medicaid drugs that we cover that not other states are covering.
Yeah, we're always looking at what's offered to the population that we serve, and we've seen some really great outcomes for people who have access to that medication, just like people do in the commercial insurance world. So, we're always open to the conversation.
Let's talk about road funding. Is a road funding plan, from your seat, do the numbers make sense? Is it financially possible?
Yeah, totally. I know we can get it done. The governor put out her plan in February. The fixing the roads has been a priority for the speaker, and I know the Senate gave a nod to it in their budget as well. So we're optimistic. I think that Michiganders deserve answers, and people are looking for leadership from Lansing. So we're ready to get it done.
Is it financially possible, though, without finding new arteries of state revenue, like a vape tax?
Yeah, the governor in her plan called for new revenue to support the roads. We know that we can't cut our way to $3 billion, which is the number that's sort of out there and that we're talking about. And so in the governor's plan, she threw out some suggestions for revenue, including looking at marijuana, including looking at who uses the roads, making sure that we're sending more money to local roads and to transit. She said alongside a revenue conversation, we'd be willing to look at repurposing existing general fund dollars, but that we can't cut our way to get there.
What do you personally think are the least controversial ways to create new revenue?
That's a great question. I think that the governor put out a mix of options, and there's a lot of different options that have been talked about as we've had this debate over the years. And I think that at the end of the day, Michiganders are looking for leaders to come up with a plan that will invest in our roads.
Do you think the legislature, they're going to get a road funding plan and a state budget done before the end of June?
Let's do it all. Yeah, I'm sure we can get it done.
Would you be willing to bet some money on that, though?
In my personal capacity, sure. We've gotten budgets done by July 1st with Republican legislatures, with Democratic legislatures. schools, local governments, and higher ed institutions have a July 1st fiscal year kickoff across the state. And so I think we owe it to them to make sure they know the resources they have to work with. And so we made it through the revenue estimating conference a couple weeks ago. Our revenues are stable, our plan is working, and so we have all that we need to get to the table and get the budget done.
Now, I know one thing that hasn't been done yet is a fiscal year 2024 book closing supplemental. And I know by not getting that done promptly, it can impact the state's credit rating. Am I describing that right? Is that something on your radar at all?
Yeah, we're having conversations with the legislature. There's a deadline for the state budget office to complete the annual comprehensive financial report. And so we got that done a couple weeks ago, and we're looking forward to fiscal year 26 with the legislature now.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to tax credits, there's a lot of tax credit proposals floating right now. There's a child care tax credit proposal, a caregiver tax credit proposal. What are your thoughts on tax credits? Can we sustain them in a year like 2025?
Yeah, we, going back 2 years ago, passed the largest tax cut in decades for working families and seniors by quintupling the earned income tax credit and repealing the retirement tax. Those are going into, this is the first year that they'll be fully phased in, and we're paying back record amounts to seniors and working families through those tax credits. We also last year passed a bipartisan R&D tax credit. That's all built into the budget, and so we know that those are working. The budget that we put out this year continues those tax credits, but it does not include any new ones.
What is often the state's return on investment when it chooses to go forward with these tax credit proposals?
Yeah, I think the earned income tax credit is such a great example. It was originally a Republican idea to help get low-income families back into the workforce, and it's been a huge success. And so through the quintupling that we passed a few years ago, we've seen more families claim that tax credit at higher dollar amounts, and that means that it's working. Those are dollars that go back into local communities, so they support local restaurants, stores, and the return on investment is great.
Kind of like a halo effect, you would describe it as, a glow.
Absolutely.
And Senate Democrats, in their proposed budget that they voted out earlier this month, they include some relief grants that would go toward businesses and farmers impacted by tariffs. What are your thoughts on that proposal, tariff relief grants?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. You know, one of the things we heard at the revenue estimating conference is that the chaos in Washington, D.C. is causing a lot of uncertainty. And so we're tracking tariffs, trade, and tax policy and monitoring that really closely. And so in the state, we know that our plan is working. Our corporate income tax continues to be strong. Our revenue numbers were adjusted down a little bit from January, but that's because we paid out more than we anticipated in EITC and pension tax refunds. So I would say our economic tools are working. We're watching with great concern, especially the tariffs impacts on the automobile industry and agriculture being two of our top industries in the state. We'll see how that plays out. In terms of the state budget, you know, we're well positioned. We've got a record balance in the rainy day fund. We don't have the long-term resources to fill voids and the gaps that some of the federal policy could create. And so I think we've got to stay focused on what we're doing and what's working and continue to sharpen our economic tools.
Are there any budget gaps, possible budget gaps, that you can confidently, for sure, predict right now? You say we're going to have a gap in this.
Based on the revenue estimating conference, we have the resources that we need to pass a great budget. Continuing the work that we've done in fiscal year 24 and continuing to invest in key things like making sure kids have the tools that they need to learn, that we're growing jobs in local economies, that we're fixing the roads, and there's a lot more work to do on that front. So in this moment, we're really well positioned. And I can say, when I talk to my colleagues from across the country, other states are not in that same position. So I think we take that for granted. We have a lot of states that right now are talking about either raising taxes or cutting programs just to maintain current spending. But our revenues are strong and stable, and we're really well positioned.
How do you think other states got into that hole?
You know, some of the challenges that we've heard about are the one-time federal dollars that we all received during COVID. Michigan was really careful about making sure that we spent those one-time dollars on one-time investments. So infrastructure, upgrading our state parks, building a new state psych hospital. We knew those dollars were just coming in one moment of time, and we invested them really responsibly.
The governor has essentially gone on the record that she doesn't have much appetite in signing a temporary budget that would keep government rolling and kind of give the legislature more time to negotiate a budget beyond the end of June. What are your thoughts on that? What could be some of the long-term repercussions of doing a temporary fill-in budget like that the House has proposed?
Yeah, that's how we've seen things operate in Washington, D.C. for a long time, and that's not how we want to do business here in the state.
But what's wrong with doing business like that, though?
I think that we have the resources we need to pass a great budget. And between the executive branch, the state house, and the state senate, at the end of the day, we all care about the same things. We want to invest in our kids. We want to fix the roads. We want to continue to grow jobs in the economy. And so we've got the time to get it done. And I know once we get to the table, we'll be able to come up with a great budget on time.
Do you think the reason why there are so many projected deficits when it comes to road funding on the state level alone, when you talk about MDOT managed highways, is the reason for that, is it because there was never a tax increase approved in the past, a gas tax increase approved?
We've seen decades and decades of disinvestment in our infrastructure. And so, no one created this problem overnight, and it's going to take us a long time to fix it. But between the governor's Rebuilding Michigan program, which I know we all drove past a lot of orange barrels on the drive up, sorry, and you're welcome. Between that, which is leveling off, and the federal resources through the Infrastructure and Jobs Act leveling off, right now we're at a critical moment where we need to come up with a long-term sustainable plan to make sure that we have our roads fixed into the future.
Is there anything that, when you think about the executive budget proposal, for yourself personally, is there anything you really love that you're like, I want to keep this regardless of what happens?
Yes. I'm a mom of 2 young kids, so between access to universal high-quality pre-K, free school meals, those are 2 things that we passed in a bipartisan manner in the past that I think maintaining will be really important for the future of our kids. But this year, new in the budget, we included the governor's SMART plan for education, which pairs record investment again in K-12 schools, but also make sure that we're doubling down to do better on student outcomes. So we've seen national trends of student test scores headed in the wrong direction, and unfortunately, Michigan is a part of that trend. And so what we've done is set aside resources, including base funding for schools, and tied it to making sure that schools are using evidence-based curriculum to improve outcomes. And for me, that's something that I know Democrats and Republicans care about, that I am really hopeful we can get done this year.
Could you just walk me through real briefly, what do those accountability mechanisms, what do they look like?
Yeah, one of the main things is really helping districts choose from curriculum that's evidence-based. So right now there are so many options out there, and in some districts there's a full-time staffer that's focused on curriculum, and in others it's boards that are trying to navigate what's out there and what works. So we're saying we want to maintain local control, but let's put together a toolbox of options that we know work and that work here in the state and have measurable outcomes to improve test scores.
Do you feel, would you dare say, should teachers and school staff not be getting a raise if the scores aren't going up?
I think we need to do both. We've made huge progress on investing in the per pupil foundation allowance. We closed the gap. I'm hopeful that this year we'll get a final budget that's over $10,000 per pupil. So we need additional resources into the classroom, and also we need to do better. And I'd say teachers have some of the hardest jobs in the state, and so they deserve everything. They're making it more. So I think we can do both.
We are near the end of our conversation. So I just want to ask you real briefly, what are your non-negotiables? As you get ready for the big budget negotiating palooza, what are you not willing to give up on?
I don't think that we're going to get into a tough spot that way. I'd say the governor's first time we passed budgets with an all-Republican legislature, and during that time we increased funding for our classrooms. We created the Reconnect and Achievement Scholarship. we did record investment in roads and bridges, and I know that we're going to continue to do that, because at the end of the day, we all care about the same thing.
And what do you have to say goodbye to when you think about something you were able to invest in the past that we can't anymore?
We've done a really good job at investing one-time resources in one-time projects. I think the revenue estimating conference shows that we're sort of at a return to normal, and making sure that we're doubling down on the fundamentals. So I think that you'll see a lot of that in the budget this year.
Thank you so much, Director Flood. I really appreciate you coming on for the first ever live on Mackinac. It was fun.
Thank you. Thanks.